Do they have the votes? That is the big question in the Senate, as all eyes are on the vote for the tax overhaul bill. As of right now, Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn says, quote, "We're not there yet, but confidence is high." Joining me right now is Ohio Senator and Senate Finance Committee member Rob Portman. The president called the meeting he had with you and others, Senator, in the Senate Finance Committee productive. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Great to see you, Maria. Thanks for having me on.
What can you tell us about that meeting that the president called productive?
Well, it was a great meeting because we're in agreement. I mean, this is unlike health care, I would say, one we're both on process and substance. We've done the right thing. We put together a bill that's very attractive to Republicans and a lot of Democrats. You know, it has middle-class tax cuts. It really does. And they're going to affect the families I represent. Average is about $2,400 a family for a median income family in Ohio. But as important, Maria, I think for every working family, it's going to result in more economic growth and not just more jobs, but better jobs. And that's incredibly important. We've talked about this a lot on the show, but we've got to fix the broken tax code that makes it advantageous for U.S. companies to literally leave our shores and take their jobs and investment with them.
What are you hearing from the deficit hawks, people like Senator Flake, as well as Bob Corker? Do you think you've got them on board?
Well, I hope so. And by the way, Bob Corker is a leader on reducing the deficit, always has been. He helped work with colleagues of mine to put together this tax package, and I think he's right. We need to be concerned about the deficit, but that means we need to do pro-growth things in the tax reform bill, because by doing the pro-growth things, including making American workers competitive globally, you will see more economic growth because you're going to see more investment, therefore more productivity, therefore a better economy for everybody.
What are you planning on doing on those people who are actually not going to see lower taxes? In fact, they're going to see their taxes go up. Those people in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California, who are upset by the state and local tax deduction elimination.
Yeah, well, first, I think the House provision, which does allow for a deduction for property taxes up to $10,000 in property taxes a year, is likely to be in the end product. Let's face it. They wanted to have that in there to ensure they had the votes from House members from some of those states, and I think that's likely to be part of the final package. But second, Maria, I would just tell you, some of those individuals are going to benefit a lot from other provisions in this bill. We get rid of something that is a great complication in the current code called the alternative minimum tax. A lot of folks can't take their state and local tax deduction now, as you know, because the AMT kicks in and disallows it. We also do a lot to help pass-through companies, these smaller businesses. A lot of folks are invested directly or indirectly in pass-throughs. And then on the corporate side, as you know, we reduce the rate so it's below the average of the other industrialized countries. That's the 20% rate. And then go to a territorial type system that's going to result in a lot more income coming into those companies to be invested in plant, equipment, and people, and a lot of people benefit from that, including shareholders. So I think people need to look at the broader picture here and look at what this is going to do to our overall U.S. economy, which helps everybody.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the pass-through rate, because that's something that Ron Johnson obviously has raised, and I'm wondering if there are going to be changes in terms of the pass-through companies having a rate of 25% versus the corporate rate of 20%. Is there a middle ground here?
I think there is, and I think in the Senate we do this in a way that actually is much simpler. We provide a deduction, as you know, for smaller businesses that are pass-through companies. Actually, some of them are larger businesses, but most are smaller. The National Federation of Independent Businesses, which is the one that represents so many of these small businesses, is strongly supportive of the bill. They like what we put together. And I just think it's going to be great for the pass-through companies, who are smaller companies but do employ about half of America's workforce, and is where a lot of the startups are and a lot of the innovation. So we do have significant tax relief there, again, to encourage investment and growth.
Do you need to lower the top rate even further, given the fact that the top earners pay most of the tax, Senator? I mean, let's face it. We know that the top 10% of earners pay 70% of the tax, and their taxes are not going down.
Well, their taxes actually are going down. If you look at the Joint Committee on Taxation summary, their burden of taxation does not go down. In fact, it not just stays the same, it goes up slightly, which was part of the commitment we made at the beginning of this. But when you look at it, because there is a $1.5 trillion tax cut over 10 years, everybody in every bracket, every single bracket on average has tax relief. But I will say that, again, if you look at the Senate bill, the top rate is 38.5%, not 39.6%. There's no bubble above that. We do provide for tax relief there, but we also say that we want most of this relief to go in two places. One, middle-class families. And so a family in Ohio or in New York, the average median income family is going to get significant relief. Nationally, if you're making $50 grand a year, you're going to see a 36% tax cut.
Yeah.
If you're making, $85,000 a year, you're going to see a 20% tax cut. That's significant.
No,
and
you're
then
right.
second,
Yep.
and then second, we focus on getting the business rate down and making our workers competitive globally. And I think that's really important.
It's really important. I totally agree with that. That the corporate rate at 20% is going to have real impact. But I guess what I'm referring to in terms of taxes going up is just the elimination of a lot of these deductions.
Well, again, if you look at it nationally, you're going to see tax relief for every single bracket. And for those folks who are in that top bracket in a place like New York, Maria, where you are, they're going to see other things like the alternative minimum tax having been repealed and broader economic growth, which helps everybody.
The president is going to be on Capitol Hill today to rally Senate Republicans. What are you expecting out of this meeting with the president today?
Well, I think it's going to be, again, a very productive and helpful meeting because we're together on this one. 90% of Republicans have already said they're not just yes on this bill, but they're really excited about it. That's within the Senate caucus. We also have some Democrats who are interested. Why? Because it is middle-class tax cuts, and they've been calling for that for a long time. So I think it'll be more like a supportive rally than it is trying to focus on the members. About 10% of our caucus who aren't quite there yet, who want to get there. By the way, all of them want to get there. This is not, again, I make the analogy to health care where we had real differences, philosophical differences. Here, it's a question on the small business side, for instance. We know there's significant tax relief. Should there be a little more to provide parity with the larger companies? That's the question. It's not whether this is good policy.
So you feel like they want to get to yes, and that's certainly a good sign. It's different than what we were dealing with a couple of months ago. Have you actually spoken with John McCain? Do you think John McCain wants to get to yes?
I have, and you should talk to him directly, but John McCain for many years has talked about the need for tax reform. I was involved in his campaign back in 2008, and one of his proposals there was a lot of what we're talking about, which is to lower the rates and broaden the base of taxation so that you have a more efficient, simplified tax system. So, he's on board with the economics, and, you need to talk to him directly, but I think it's consistent with what he has supported in the past.
And what about Senator Roy Moore? I mean, how do you square that out? Do you have a plan in terms of what happens in Alabama?
Well, we'll see what happens in Alabama. The voters are now going to be the deciders there. But look, I think this will all be done before that election even takes place. I hope that we'll be able to finish our work here in the Senate in the next week, and then the conference with the House and Senate should be relatively short because our bills are very similar. The structures are very similar. There'll be some differences to be ironed out, and then we should be able to get it to a vote, before the December 12th election. That's certainly the timing we're on now. That
would be good because we don't know what's going to happen in Alabama. Let me ask you. I know that there's been some talk that you will get Democrats. A few Democrats perhaps to vote, but that's not going to be the 51st vote. We know that they're not going to do that. So do you think you have the Republican votes?
Yeah, I think you're right, Maria. By the way, I've talked to a number of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Again, they like some parts of this bill very much, including the middle class tax cuts, and they all realize that you got to fix this broken system internationally because, as you know, 3 times as many U.S. companies have been purchased by foreign companies in the last year as compared to U.S. companies purchasing foreign companies. That's just wrong, and it is driving investment and jobs overseas. They get that. They know that we've got to deal with that problem. So I do think a lot of them are interested. And again, 90% of Republicans are already on board and, again, enthusiastic about it. So I think we'll end up getting, with some small changes, some of the remaining Republicans on board. And I think you're probably right. I think probably some of those Democrats who are looking at this are going to wait and see how we do in terms of getting to that 50th vote. With the vice president, of course, you need to get to 50. We have 52 Republicans.
Right, exactly. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much.
Always great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.